Hi, this is Jeff Cassman with Catholic Men of America, and today I have with me a great guy that we're going to get to know together, Jonathan Monnereau. Jonathan, how you doing?
Jeff, I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor.
So, as always, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. What part of the world are you in today?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm just a little north of Los Angeles in Ventura County, Camarillo to be specific. While we're pretty close to Los Angeles, it is a little bit of a different world. We still have a fair amount of agricultural land here, and but we're not too far away from the ocean. So yeah, it's a wonderful place.
And I guess the reason people live out there where you do and tolerate everything that comes along with being in the People's Republic of California is the weather. So what's the weather like today?
Yeah, it's actually I mean, as advertised, it's actually a little too warm for my liking. I don't know why, but we are actually, I think, up in the high 80s right now. So especially for March, that just doesn't feel right. But you know, if it were the weekend, we would be at the beach and it would be wonderful.
And are you a native?
Yeah, great question. So I was actually born in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But when I was about 3 or 4, my parents moved west, and we actually ended up just south of Los Angeles in Orange County. So I grew up in Orange County on the other side of LA, in Irvine, and did all my schooling there up until college. But yeah, well, kind of where I am right now reminds me of what Orange County used to look like when I was growing up. But it's grown a lot down there.
And tell us a little bit about your background with your family. Are you a cradle Catholic?
I am a cradle Catholic. So my dad is a convert himself, and my mom is a cradle Catholic. You know, they had actually were very much like many people in the 60s, kind of stepped away from their faith for a while. But when I was probably around 5, 6, you know, they kind of realized that they needed to get things back on track. So started attending mass again. And I am the youngest of 4, and 2 older brothers on top, and then an older sister. So I would say for me, I was really blessed. I think particularly that when they did come back to the church, I was young enough where I think that imprint stayed, and it was very much part of my upbringing. So I did not do any Catholic schooling growing up. So I like to say, in a way, we were the most Catholic family kind of in my sphere, which doesn't say much. But yeah, the faith was always something that was very integral to my raising. In Irvine, we're not far from St. Michael's Abbey, and the old location of it, for those that are familiar with it. And there was one of their priests who had recently been ordained when I was still probably in junior high, was assigned to our parish, and that's how we were first introduced to St. Michael's. And that ended up being a tremendous influence in my life, and kind of helped me in a number of ways of just attending mass at the Abbey and getting to know many of the frauders there. But they were extremely influential in my spiritual development.
St. Michael's, that's the Norbertines, right?
That's the Norbertines, yes. Yes, and they are a wonderful community of men. A few years ago, they moved to a new property, a beautiful property, and they had really outgrown where they had been before, and they continue to thrive with vocations year after year. And yeah, they have a wonderful kind of blend of a life where yeah, they do live in community together. They pray the hours together. So there's definitely a strong contemplative aspect, but they're also very active, and they go out. And I really think they're kind of the heart of Orange County, and so their priests go out and assist at many of the different parishes. And I kind of fast forwarding a bit, but I went to Thomas Aquinas College, and so when I was there for the majority of the time, we had a Norbertine chaplain. So they do wonderful work.
Norbertine's easily recognizable because, of course, they wear the white habit.
That angelic habit. That's exactly right. And what I think I've learned is that while the Norbertines have that distinct white habit, some of them will have the more traditional, the larger hoods that can actually be put over the canons there at St. Michael's Abbey. Theirs is smaller, and I think that's a sign that they are, the hoods have a practical aspect where you have the friars or so out in the fields or preaching and just the practical aspect of having that covering. But theirs is kind of symbolically showing that they have a very contemplative life as well.
You mentioned you went to Thomas Aquinas.
Yes. So that was kind of an interesting, I would say an interesting way in which that transpired. So as I mentioned before, I went to public school my whole life, and really Thomas Aquinas College was not on my radar in any way. I believe my dad was the first one who started seeing it, just ads and maybe First Things, I think. And so he was intrigued by it, and I think in his youth he for a time would go door to door selling the great books, and so the great books always had a special place in his heart. So when he saw that there was a college, a Catholic college, devoted to the study of the great books, he started looking into it. So that's how it kind of first got on our radar. Just as an obedient son, I kind of looked into it, but I had already thought that I was just going on more of the modern American college route. So it's quite a journey, but I actually after high school, I first went to a large public university, the UC Santa Barbara, and I started there, and I was already accepted into TAC. That was a decision going back and forth, but first ended up going to UC Santa Barbara. But when I went there, aside from just the classroom, which was kind of what I was expecting, and kind of an open hostility to the faith, I was kind of prepared for that. But unfortunately, at the time, the Newman Center was in a way worse than what I experienced in the classrooms, and being a growing up in post Vatican II, kind of spirit of Vatican II era, liturgical innovations were nothing new to me. But I would say that this particular church at the time kind of took a certain pride in specializing in liturgical innovation, and not in any good way. So all that's to say that there really wasn't kind of that spiritual foundation for me at the time, and so I kind of quickly realized about halfway through the year that the best thing for me would be to leave. And so I ended up leaving, starting over at Thomas Aquinas College, and God's providence works, and I ended up, I think, in the class I should have been at Thomas Aquinas College. It's where I met my wife, who was in the same class, and it all worked out.
Yeah, what an inspiration from the Holy Spirit for you to recognize at that age and that point in your life the track you were on, and the alternatives that you had, and obviously that led to meeting your wife. So that's wonderful. How long have you been married?
Yes, so we just celebrated our 20th anniversary last year, and so we have 5 children. Our oldest is 19, and then our youngest is 5.
Congratulations on
Thank
those
you.
children. Let's talk a little business. What business are you in? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am in commercial health insurance. So I work with businesses to help them manage and implement their employee benefits program. So I kind of ended up in this field. I didn't know much about insurance, but in between my junior and senior year of college, there was a young lady who was in the class below me, and her father happened to start an internship program. And so this summer in between my junior and senior year, I ended up interning for his company. And that man, Jim Scanlon, just wonderful Catholic man, 11 children. And it was my first introduction to the business world and particularly the insurance world. And probably the only thing I knew, about insurance was how to spell it. But I had the internship and it went well. Still don't know that I knew that much afterwards, but he said, hey, look, we really enjoyed having you, and you have a job waiting for you after you graduate if you want it. So my now wife and I got engaged senior year, so I needed that job. I ended up taking him up on it. But it's been a wonderful career, and I've what I think I enjoy the most is I get to see a lot of different businesses, meet a lot of different business owners, and it's always intriguing to me, just the first of all, the industriousness still of our American culture, and also just the uniqueness that it's not like there's this rubber stamp. Meeting business owners, the temperaments and the skill sets are all over the place, and it's always fascinating to me to see that, how all of these people in their own unique way can be so eminently successful.
Insurance is a really complex business. The insurance business you're in has probably always been complex with employee benefits for companies, but since the Obama era, it's even gotten more so. And of course, you're in California, of all places, which I know has a lot of additional rules. What are you seeing in the industry in the last 5 or 10 years, and just in terms of the general directions? And also, if you could just mention your perspective on whether or not there's an exodus of business from California.
Yeah, absolutely. All great questions. So first of all, just specifically on kind of, I would say, the health insurance industry, it's extremely challenging. And, I, as somebody who day in, day out has to meet with business owners and review the renewals, that more often than not, I mean, it's unfortunate that we've become conditioned where if it's a single digit increase, that's still an increase, but that's, we celebrate that as good news. But we are continuing to see incredible pressure on health insurance rates. There are a lot of factors, I think, that are driving that, and very, very complex. But we're seeing a big, I would say, uptick in pharmacy claims. So obviously, things that have been dominating the headlines are weight loss drugs, the GLP-1s, and the high demand there, but that are still very costly and very much driving up utilization. We continue to develop amazing new drugs that are saving people's lives. Just generally, as an example, there's a pool that I manage, and in that pool, there's one individual who is currently incurring a $200,000 a month pharmacy claim. It's an infusion, and so it's one of these specialty designer pharmaceutical drugs that is keeping this person alive. So praise God, there's somebody walking around today that even 5 years ago would not be. But we have these drugs now, which are great, but the innovation, the research, all of the approvals are costly, and it is a business. And so it's pretty incredible when you can have the one individual on one pharmacy claim racking up about almost $2.5 million a year alone, right? And somebody's got to pay that. And so what's happening? Insurance is the sharing of risk fundamentally, and so that's being spread out, and that's just one example. So all of that is to say, we're continuing to go in this direction where the increases are coming year after year after year. To your second question about California, absolutely, there's a lot of pressure on business owners here in California. What we've seen is a lot of it depends on kind of maybe the life cycle of the business owners or where they're at. But I would say in the last 5 years or so, a lot of businesses that I've worked with, you have people just say, hey, look, we had kind of some succession plans in place, but I can't do this anymore. I don't want to. I'm done. And so we're seeing a lot of local businesses being sold to actually out-of-state investors. So maybe an out-of-state company is like, hey, we want to expand into California. And so what they do is they acquire. So we're seeing businesses pick up and move. We're seeing other businesses just sell outright. But yes, it continues to be a strain for, I think, a lot of businesses here in California.
I want to review a little bit of what you mentioned. There's just so much there to unpack, which might be boring to some of the audience, but I think it's important. You talked about insurance rates, a lot of pressure, and then you kind of explained part of the reason why. Lots of pharmacy usage, heavy demand for drugs. Obviously, we have an obesity epidemic in the United States, and a lot of reasons behind that, including the food supply and the lifestyle. And so we have expensive drugs that people are utilizing to bring down their weight. Associated with that, of course, we have a lot of diabetes and other diseases related to obesity and high blood pressure and all the rest of it. And then we have what I think is revealing for people maybe have not thought about this. Part of the reason that insurance rates are so high is that there are a few people, percentage-wise, that have extraordinary costs, like the one individual you mentioned who's got a $200,000 a month drug habit, if you will, to keep that person alive. And that cost is spread over all the people in that plan. And so what is it? Is it Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule, right? Where,
Yep.
you basically have got 20% of the people probably that are responsible for 80% of the expense. But that's the nature of insurance. That's the way it works, right? And that person might be somebody else today, but it could be you tomorrow, or it could be you next year, 5 years or 10 years from now. Do you agree with all that? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that is the case. I mean, obviously, health insurance is one of those things that it's one of those benefits, one of those things that you pay for that you hope you don't really have to use beyond kind of maybe routine doctor visits and physicals and exams. But it is one of those things where you or somebody in your family, when they really need it, you're very grateful that you have, and you realize how important it really is.
I want to make a slight tangent here, but one thing that I've discovered, not that I am special, it's just that through some research, as my children have explored alternate health insurance options, if you look at these health sharing plans, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
Yes.
for the audience, health sharing plans are not true insurance. They're simply a collection of people who have voluntarily come together and agreed to pay a monthly price to be in this collection of people. And then when there are significant expenses related to health, the people in that group share those costs by sending money to one another to kind of cover those expenses. It's kind of like a primitive version of health insurance. But one of the extraordinary things, which anybody that's studied economics should know and understand, is that there's a dramatically lower overall cost associated with health needs because everybody involved in those plans is paying those first dollars out of pocket. And so they manage those dollars much more tightly than they might when there's an insurer involved. So when there's an insurance company, people don't see the necessarily the full expense that they're incurring. They may not care, right? Maybe they're at that point in their insurance coverage where it's like, well, at this point, insurance covers everything. And so on these plans, there's a real incentive to manage their costs, their drug costs, their doctor costs, because it's all out of pocket and then they get reimbursed as opposed to, hitting whatever their numbers are. And so we have this, unfortunately, this perverse incentive in the United States with the way our employer managed health insurance plans are, where the user of the services doesn't really see all of the costs, doesn't bear all of those costs, doesn't see them. Any thoughts about that? Please feel free to disagree if you.
No. I think that you're absolutely onto something there. And so, what we've seen is, Jeff, you're exactly right that there's kind of this, because of the disintermediation, I would say, between the consumer, the subscriber, and kind of back end everything that's happening there. Because of that, there's not really an awareness in terms of the direct effect that somebody's utilization has on driving up the costs. And so we absolutely see that there is, I would say, kind of a frame of mind of treating health insurance almost like a gym membership, right? Like I pay my monthly fee, and as a result, I want to be able to go and access and go whenever I want, and not think about it, and use all the other amenities that are kind of built into there. But not realizing that, hey, look, that traditionally that's not what health insurance was for. It's there in case you really need it, you or your family, and so as a result, when those sorts of behaviors are encouraged, that's increasing utilization. What we would say maybe non-critical, non-essential treatments that are becoming very common. That all goes to the bottom line. So one way or the other, that is going to cause increase in costs. So there are a lot of different factors that are really, I would say, contributing to this, probably what is realistically an unsustainable model long term. Something's got to give. That being said, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've been saying that for probably 20 years, and here we still are. But absolutely, there needs to be kind of an adjustment, I think, of how health insurance is viewed and what its primary role is. And I think at some level, there's some recognition within the industry that that's the case. And I would say over the last 10 plus years, an example of that is many businesses have shifted to what are called high deductible health plans, right? So there's like higher first dollar out-of-pocket responsibility to the member. However, you're capped, and so kind of worst case catastrophic scenario, you're going to be okay. But basically, kind of for those first dollar things like those maybe non-essential doctor visits or urgent care visits, there's a little bit of a deterrent there where you might want to reflect and say, like, is this really necessary? And education is another aspect. I mean, again, without going too far into the weeds, but just the way in which people use their health insurance and making sure that they're using it as prudently as possible. So as an example, very often something happens to a child and it's like, oh, we need to get that taken care of. And so the instinct is just, let's just go to local emergency room. Well, the emergency room is really for emergencies, and it's amazing what percentage of people that are going in there are really services that could be treated at an urgent care center, which would be a lot more cost effective and probably more efficient treatment. So that is just an example where continued education to be informed consumers can very much have an impact on utilization and costs for not only the employee, the subscriber, but also for the employer.
A lot of Catholics are becoming more concerned with the morality of their choices in the marketplace and where they put their dollars. Do employers in California have the option to select plans or curate coverage so that they can exclude things like abortion, contraception, or treatment for sex changes and related activities?
Yes, I mean, it's a critical question and very important. And unfortunately, the answer is that for most businesses, the answer is no. And it is for a majority of businesses in California, also just generally in the United States, it's practically impossible not to at least materially cooperate with evil. But in certain places, it continues to be more so. So, for example, in California, just this year, there is a requirement that all health insurance plans need to have as an offered benefit IVF. And so across the board, it's not optional or voluntary. Every plan has a built-in rider, is what they call it, covering IVF. Of course, that's in addition to abortion, to contraception, and it is extremely challenging. Now, that being said, for Catholic businesses, so Catholic nonprofits, there are other options for them, thankfully, and I think a lot of maybe smaller Catholic nonprofits are not aware that there are solutions for them. So these have been tested and tried all the way up to the Supreme Court. So if you recall, not too long ago, you had mentioned the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and so one of the provisions there was the universal HHS Health and Human Services mandate for covering of contraception by plans. And so that's where the Little Sisters of the Poor, my alma mater, Thomas Aquinas College, and some others came together and challenged this and went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And so there was upheld this kind of religious exemption. And so all of that to say is there are some programs out there that exist that Catholic entities can participate in, where they can access top tier employee benefits to offer to their employees that are fully compliant with all the moral directives of the church and right reason. And that is, for me, where I really try and carve out a portion of my time, Jeff, to spend helping businesses, Catholic entities, find and navigate through that and to those programs. St. Teresa Benedict of the Cross talks about in one of her works kind of the difference between somebody's working as an occupation and a vocation, and that's always resonated with me. And part of me, I would like to think that I'm always working in that realm of the vocation, but really that's not always the case. But fundamentally, with these Catholic entities, particularly, that's where I really feel like it is vocational. So kind of regardless of the size or where they're at, that's an avenue where I feel like I can really help and assist these businesses find something that is a great benefit for their employees, but also is completely compliant with all moral directives.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. Your primary focus is not necessarily Catholic organizations. You're in the secular world. Your focus is, are you at 100 employees and up? Is that kind of where your focus is?
Yeah. So typically my focus is, what we call large groups. So over 100 employees. But that being said, going back to the vocational, I do carve out a portion of my time to of course, work with Catholic entities, but not even just Catholic entities, but if they're Catholic business owners that need some assistance and help navigating this, and kind of regardless of the size, I will help them in any way that I can.
Yeah, so great for the men listening who might have a smaller company with fewer than 100 employees. Certainly, you've devoted yourself, I think, in a great way to making sure you can take care of them. So I want to encourage anyone listening, especially in California, to take you up on that. One thing that you have mentioned for the Catholic organizations that was really intriguing to me, that I think is a great development, is a company and organization that specializes in Catholic nonprofits. If I've misspoken, please correct me, but would you tell us a little bit more about that connection that you have and that option that you've got?
Absolutely. So there is this wonderful health insurance trust called the RITA Trust, the Religious Education Trust Association. And it is it's been around actually for several decades, but for a long time it was really intended for large Catholic entities. So I think dioceses, primarily dioceses in the United States, maybe some larger religious orders or universities, Catholic. But over the last several years, they've really expanded. And so now their program is available for even smaller Catholic entities. And so the litmus test is basically if an entity is in the Kennedy directory, then they are eligible to join. I mean, that's basically the litmus test. But this program is, first of all, there's a lot of flexibility. It has tremendous benefits. I don't work for a Catholic entity. I don't have access to it. I wish I did. But I've had the privilege of being able to introduce it to a number of Catholic organizations, and I've seen firsthand the benefit of having quality health insurance like the RITA Trust. So not only in just the peace of mind knowing that they're not even materially cooperating with any evil in the sorts of coverages that are being provided to their employees, but also just the level of benefits. And so especially a lot of people who work in the Catholic nonprofit world, for the most part, it's not to become rich, right? It's very much a labor of love and working from the heart. And so, from a wage standpoint, they could probably have gone another path and made more. It is an opportunity for the employers to provide something showing their value, the value of the employees, and so you've got some of my clients, large Catholic families, and to know that the 12 members of that family all are covered and protected, regardless of what happens, and that's just that peace of mind there is amazing. And so it's a wonderful program that I really believe in, and for any Catholic entity that has not explored it, I would strongly encourage them to.
Jonathan, final question of the day. We are living in the age of AI. It's having a similar effect on many businesses that the development of the internet did, let's call it 25 years ago. Some people think that it will have the same effect that the development of electricity or the Industrial Revolution did. Certainly in some industries that's already happening. My background in advertising, I can tell you it's been a total transformation. Are you seeing anything happening in the health insurance world and your business regarding artificial intelligence?
Absolutely. And there's probably a lot I could say there. I will say that just like everybody else, I'm keeping my eyes open and paying attention. I don't know that I've got a better sense than most, but I can speak to ways in which I'm immediately seeing it and its impact. And I think that's only going to accelerate here in the next year or two. So positively, there are like any business, when you do anything long enough, you see kind of inefficiencies that have just kind of been accepted as the norm and just kind of the status quo. So first, on the positive side, we're already seeing ways in which I think AI is helping with a lot of that. And so a lot of this stuff can be kind of on the back end, but basically, let's say you've got a large group and you have all of their claims data. You can use AI now to really, insurance companies are doing this, but even brokers working with and consulting with businesses are using AI to really maximize kind of the story that we can infer from that data. So as an example, we can easily look at all of the, let's say, all of the pharmacy spend, like all the different prescription drugs that, let's say, a large self-funded business has that their employees are using. We can then, using AI, run reports and analyses, looking at that, comparing it to the different places in the marketplace about who's got the best contracts for those particular drugs, to find the best pharmacy benefit manager. So that's just an example. But on the I would say on the employer facing and even the employee facing, new technology systems, easier to use interfaces are coming. But all of that's to say, we're seeing also, I think there's going to be a lot of kind of redundancy from employee level standpoint, and we're just kind of on the surface of that. But I do expect there to be kind of a contraction in certain parts of our industry in terms of, you know, fewer service people, back end kind of data analysts and things like that. A lot of the insurance companies, a little removed from what I do, but they use a lot of offshore services, and I think a lot of that's going to go away and be automated using AI. So it really is a brave new world. I think we're just on the cusp of it. You know, maybe everything does completely get revamped, and maybe it's much to do about nothing, but I think it's likely going to be somewhere in between there, at least specifically with regards to my industry.
Yeah, it's extraordinary what's happening, and so one of the things we're encouraging men to focus on, especially in these kinds of intellectual jobs where, you know, you're at a desk, you're working on a computer, you're using your brain, you're likely to be replaced by AI at some point, is to focus on relationships, because those relationships will persevere through these changes. And if you are displaced, then the relationships are what you need to find a new job or to start a business or to grow a business, that sort of thing.
I think that's absolutely right. And that is, and fundamentally, I do think that one way or the other, those relationships are going to be key and have a place.
Jonathan, thank you for your time today. Thanks for sharing so generously insight into your business and the industry. Likely some things for small business owners to learn here, and Catholics of all backgrounds to benefit from. Jonathan Monnereau, appreciate you. You're based out of Los Angeles, but you can help Catholics all over the country with insight into health insurance and what they're doing. Keep up the good work.
Jeff, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
God bless you.
God bless.